She stared me down from across the conference table like I was a traitor. "This is disloyalty," Karen said sharply. "You've been interviewing with other companies behind my back?" I didn't flinch. After 3 years of denied raises, extra hours, and empty promises, I had finally taken a single step for myself, a quiet job interview, after work hours, no NDA broken, nothing inappropriate. But to her, it was betrayal. Within minutes, my office access was revoked. Security escorted me to my desk like I was some kind of corporate criminal. My inbox deleted. My calendar wiped clean. 15 minutes to pack up 7 years of loyalty. I smiled, shook her hand, and said, "I wish you and the team all the best." And I walked out, calmly, head held high. But what Karen didn't know was this. I wasn't leaving empty-handed. 3 days later, she got an email that shook her corner office to its core, from someone she never expected, about something she thought she had total control over. Let's just say she fired the wrong woman. Have you ever been punished just for wanting better? You're going to want to hear this story to the end. I started working at Modex Digital when I was 34, a scrappy little advertising firm with a lot of ambition and not nearly enough infrastructure. I was their third hire in the strategy department. We worked out of a repurposed warehouse that still smelled like fresh paint and dust. At the beginning, I loved it. We were underdogs, building campaigns from scratch, landing clients twice our size, staying late to celebrate every win with boxed wine and pizza. It wasn't glamorous, but it felt like something mattered. My boss, Karen, had a reputation. People called her the closer. She was sharp, eloquent, and always impeccably dressed. Think steel blazer, red lip, no apologies energy. I admired her. I wanted to be like her. In the early days, she was surprisingly warm, quick to compliment, generous with opportunities. She saw I was a workhorse, and she used it. I stayed late. I took on accounts no one wanted. I made her look good. She loved that. Every performance review said the same thing. Excellent, reliable, leadership potential. But when I asked for a raise after my second year, now's not the time. Let's revisit this after Q2. Q2 became Q4. Q4 became, let's wait until after the merger. Then the merger passed. Still no raise, no promotion. Instead, I got more work, bigger clients, more responsibility, and the same salary from 3 years ago. I kept hoping things would turn around. I thought loyalty would eventually pay off. Spoiler, it didn't. What made it worse? Watching the people around me climb while I stayed stuck. Especially Ben, a junior strategist I trained, who was promoted above me after just 18 months. When I asked why, Karen smiled and said, "He's more aggressive in meetings." Clients like that. I remember walking to my car that night in the rain, gripping the steering wheel, thinking, aggressive? Is that the code word for having a Y chromosome? Still, I didn't quit. I didn't storm out because I believed in the work, because I didn't want to start over at 40, because I told myself, one more quarter, one more client, one more shot. But my loyalty wasn't being rewarded. It was being used. The real turning point came after a client pitch I led, a pitch that landed us a $2 million contract. Karen stood in front of the team and said, "This was a full team effort, but I want to shout out Ben and myself for pulling this together." She didn't even mention me, not once. I felt something snap inside me. Not anger, not yet, just a bone-deep weariness. That night, I opened LinkedIn. 2 weeks later, I interviewed at Nova and Gray, a boutique firm founded by 2 women who left corporate to do things their way. The vibe was collaborative. The pay, 30% higher. The team, diverse, balanced. It felt like breathing again. I didn't tell anyone, not even my closest coworker, Michelle. Though she suspected something, she pulled me aside one afternoon and said quietly, "You know she'll never promote you, right?" I gave her a small smile. I know, but I wasn't angry anymore. I was ready. I had built systems, processes, tools the company now depended on. One of those tools, a client metrics dashboard I designed in my free time, had become central to how we measured campaign success. But here's the twist. I built it before they formally adopted it. I'd shared it with the team, not under any NDA, not paid separately, just because I believed in making things better. It was still linked to my personal GitHub. No one ever bothered to ask about licensing. They just assumed, like everything else, well, that I'd keep giving forever. So when Karen summoned me into that conference room and accused me of being disloyal for exploring other options, when she canceled my badge, erased my access, and sent me out like a criminal, I smiled for a reason, because she didn't just fire me. She just gave me leverage, and she had no idea what was coming next. I was escorted out of the building like a shoplifter. 15 minutes to pack up 7 years. No warning, no dignity, no thank you. Karen didn't even look me in the eye when I walked past her glass-walled office with the framed Forbes article on the wall. The article she was quoted in, using my words, about data-driven creativity. Her silence spoke volumes. I had become inconvenient, disposable. By the time I reached my car, my corporate email was already deactivated. I sat there, gripping the wheel, not crying, not yet, but vibrating with something I hadn't felt in a long time. Clarity. This wasn't just personal. It was strategic. She didn't fire me out of betrayal. She fired me to protect her image, because someone must have tipped her off that I was interviewing, and I knew exactly who. Ben. He had seen me in the lobby of Nova and Gray during my second interview. We made awkward eye contact. He smiled too quickly. The next day, Karen called me in. So that's how this place worked now. Recognition was currency. Loyalty was weakness. But they forgot. I wasn't just loyal. I was smart. Before leaving, I had emailed myself a copy of the project roadmap I created, the one for the campaign performance tracker. It included original build dates, the code structure, my design mock-ups, and a very important timestamp, 3 months before they asked me to integrate it into the company's pipeline. I created it on my own time, with my own tools, and shared it voluntarily. No contract, no licensing, no transfer of rights. Legally, it was still mine. And now, they were still using it. 3 days after I was fired, I sent a short, polite email to Legal Modex Corp. Com. I copied HR, and I copied my friend Michelle, who had quietly passed me screenshots from the internal Slack channel showing Karen and Ben discussing how to move forward without drama. I wrote, "Hello. As of termination date, I am no longer an employee of Modex Digital. However, it has come to my attention that the Campaign Performance Tracker CPT tool, designed and developed independently by me prior to its implementation, continues to be used within the company's systems without permission or proper licensing. Please consider this a formal notice requesting immediate removal of the tool from all internal systems, a licensing agreement and compensation discussion should Modex wish to continue using the tool, attached, timestamps, design files, and email correspondence verifying original ownership. Sincerely, Claire Sutton." 12 hours later, I got a response. "We are reviewing this matter. Please refrain from contacting other departments while legal assesses your claim." I smiled, because I knew something they didn't. I'd already contacted someone else, Nova and Gray. Remember that interview? Well, it wasn't just an interview. It was a recorded panel discussion, one where I casually mentioned the tracker I created and how it revolutionized campaign reporting. They loved it. I had already signed a preliminary consulting contract with them 2 days before my firing. The terms? Use of the tracker, under my name, my conditions, with full IP protections. They even offered to back me legally if Modex tried anything shady. So when Karen opened her email that Monday morning and saw a message from Nova and Gray's legal team, citing intellectual property infringement and misuse of proprietary software. Let's just say her perfectly curated brand cracked. Michelle called me later that day, whispering into the phone like we were plotting a heist. "Claire, she's freaking out. She thought you'd just fade away." I didn't fade. I flipped the narrative, but that wasn't the best part. The best part came the next morning, when I opened LinkedIn and saw a new post by Ben, excited to take on more leadership at Modex, proud to be part of a bold, innovative team. Attached was a picture of him in a meeting, with the campaign performance tracker dashboard still on the screen. I took a screenshot and forwarded it to legal. This time, I got a call, not an email, from Modex's general counsel. She was calm, controlled, but I could hear the tension in her voice. "Claire, we'd like to discuss a potential settlement. We believe this situation has been mishandled." I leaned back in my chair, sipping coffee from the mug Nova and Gray sent me with a handwritten card for the woman who made her own exit strategy. "Sure," I said, smiling. "Let's talk." The conference call was scheduled for 10 a.m. By 9:45, I had my laptop open, a fresh cup of coffee in hand, and my notes neatly organized on the kitchen table. Sunlight poured through my window, catching the gold trim on the Nova and Gray consulting contract sitting beside me. The screen lit up. 4 names appeared. Karen, still using her title, Chief Strategy Officer. Ben, looking nervous, lips pressed into a thin line. Marla, General Counsel at Modex HQ. And Lisa, Head of Legal at Nova and Gray, my new team. "Let's get started," Marla said calmly. "Claire, we appreciate your willingness to speak directly. We've reviewed your documentation, and we acknowledge the intellectual property dispute surrounding the CPT tool." Acknowledge? I let that word hang in the air. Karen leaned forward. "Claire, I think we both know this has been a huge misunderstanding. The team believed you had shared the tracker as part of your employment." I cut her off, politely but firmly. "That's not what the timestamps say. I shared the tool. I never signed it over." Silence. Then Lisa stepped in, cool and collected. "Let's clarify the options. Claire is willing to offer a licensing agreement at market rate, plus back pay for the months of unauthorized use. Alternatively, we'll proceed with a cease and desist and legal filing for IP infringement." Ben cleared his throat. "That seems excessive." I looked him straight through the screen. So is firing someone without cause and using their work without permission. Karen's voice changed. That thin, false calm that masked panic. "Claire, we gave you countless opportunities. You were treated well. This isn't personal." That was rich. "Oh, I agree," I replied. "It's not personal. It's contractual and legal." Marla stepped in again. "Let's pause here." She muted her mic and spoke to Karen and Ben off camera. I could still hear a few heated words bleeding through. I took a sip of coffee and looked at Lisa, who just gave me the slightest nod. 2 minutes later, Marla unmuted. "Claire, we'd like to propose a one-time payment to resolve the dispute and end any further discussion publicly or legally. The number? $95. Souders." Lisa raised an eyebrow. "We'll need that in writing." Marla nodded. "We'll also issue a memo internally clarifying authorship, and if Claire chooses to list the CPT system in her portfolio, Modex will not challenge that attribution." It was a clean win, but I wasn't done. "And one more thing," I added, calmly. "Any mention of my termination must be reclassified as a voluntary resignation. I won't have Karen's ego following me for the rest of my career." Karen went red. Ben looked away. Marla agreed. "We'll make that change retroactive in HR records." I logged off that call with my hands trembling, not from fear, from adrenaline, from the sheer power of reclaiming a narrative someone else tried to steal. I had gone from being shoved out the side door to walking through the front with a signed settlement, a licensing deal, and a cleared name. That night, I got a text from Michelle. "Heard about the call. Karen's been unusually quiet all day. No more strutting around like she owns the floor. She added a photo, a whiteboard with Claire's tracker V2, 0 scribbled in the corner and a big question mark beside it. I laughed loudly. 1 week later, I received the wire transfer. $95. $1,000. More than I'd asked for in raises over the past 3 years combined. I used part of it to pay off my car. Another part went into a savings account. And the rest? I put towards something that meant the world to me, launching my own strategy consultancy. With Nova and Gray backing me as my first client, I started small, just me, a website, and a stack of ideas I'd never been allowed to pitch before. And clients came quickly, because reputation spreads fast, especially when you walk out of a company not as the victim, but as the architect of your own comeback. Meanwhile, Karen, within 2 months, she was transitioned out of Modex during what the press release called a strategic reorganization. No fanfare, no promotion, no legacy, just a quiet end to an ego too large to notice the very people it stepped on. Ben stayed. He tried to message me once, some half-hearted apology wrapped in faux professionalism. I didn't reply, because the story was no longer about them. It was about me, the woman they underestimated, the employee they discarded, the strategist who rebuilt everything on her own terms. It wasn't just about the $95. Wellers. It wasn't just about the internal memo or the retroactive resignation label that scrubbed Karen's fingerprints off my career. It was the principle. I had spent years making that company better, building tools, mentoring juniors, solving problems no one else wanted to touch. And in return, I was fired like I was a liability, like I was a risk they were finally glad to be rid of. But in trying to erase me, they triggered something they didn't expect. I documented everything. Every deck I wrote, every tool I built, every campaign I optimized, not for revenge, but because I believed in doing things the right way. And now, that instinct had become my greatest weapon. 2 weeks after the settlement, I got a call from an unknown number. It was a recruiter from StratEdge Capital, a private equity firm that had just acquired a 40% stake in Modex. Apparently, the board was cleaning house and wanted outside consultants to conduct an internal audit of strategy systems. The recruiter said, "Your name came up, more than once." I couldn't help but laugh. They wanted me. The woman Karen had walked out like trash to come in and assess the systems I helped create. You do know I left on less than friendly terms, right? He chuckled. That's actually why they want you. Someone who understands the flaws and doesn't owe anyone loyalty. Now that was poetic justice. I signed a short-term contract, 3 months, 6 figures. No meetings with Karen. She was long gone by then. Ben avoided eye contact when I walked in. Michelle, though, met me at the elevator with a smile that could light up the whole office. "Welcome back," she said. "Though honestly, I think this time, you're in charge." And in a way, I was not with a title, but with leverage, with reputation, with truth. Part of my audit included reviewing internal knowledge assets. And when I sat down to look at the CPT dashboard, the tool that had sparked this entire battle, I noticed something. They'd updated the UI slightly, but the logic, the metrics, the framework, still mine, still untouched, still irreplaceable. I leaned back in the chair and whispered to myself, they really had no idea what they were throwing away. On the final day of my contract, I left a note on the whiteboard in the strategy war room, the same space where Karen had once cut me out of a pitch I built from scratch. In blue marker, I wrote, "When you build something that works, protect it. When you find someone who builds it, respect them." I didn't sign it. They'd know. That night, I walked through my front door, kicked off my heels, and poured myself a glass of wine. Not cheap grocery store wine like I used to buy during Modex's early days. This was a bottle I'd been saving for something worth celebrating. And that night, was it? Because justice didn't come wrapped in applause. It didn't look like a courtroom drama or a screaming match. It looked like walking back into the building that underestimated you and leaving on your own terms, with more money, more power, and more self-respect than they ever imagined you'd have. I wasn't the bitter ex-employee. I was the ghost of competence past, back to remind them what value really looks like. And when I walked away from Modex the second time, I didn't look back, because they taught me something valuable in how they treated me, that the only way to win in a game rigged against you is to stop playing by their rules. I once thought loyalty was a virtue, that if I just kept my head down, worked harder, and proved my value, people would see it. That recognition would come. But here's what no one tells you. In some places, the more silent you are, the more invisible you become. And sometimes, the only way to be heard is to leave loudly or smartly. In my case, it was both. These days, I work from a sunlit home office with no deadlines I didn't create. I choose my clients. I charge my worth. I build strategy systems for companies that actually want women in leadership, not just as mascots, but as architects. And more importantly, I sleep at night. There are no Slack messages at 9 p.m. No being passed over for someone louder, younger, or more marketable. No red-lipped managers smiling while erasing my name from the credits. Instead, there's peace and freedom and a confidence I earned the long, hard way. Sometimes, people ask me if I regret not standing up to Karen sooner. The truth, I needed that journey. I needed to learn that silence doesn't equal safety. That being the bigger person shouldn't mean shrinking yourself until you disappear. That documentation is power. That a smile isn't always kindness, and an opportunity isn't always a gift. And most of all, that walking away doesn't mean failure. Sometimes, it's the beginning of a far better chapter. I think about all the women, especially those in their 40s, 50s, even 60s, who've given so much to companies, only to be sidelined when it suited someone's ego. If that's you, let me say this. Your experience is not disposable. Your knowledge is not replaceable. Your silence is not required. You deserve rooms that welcome your voice, not just your labor. And if they don't, you leave and you build your own damn room. If you've ever been underestimated, silenced, or discarded by someone in power, I want to hear your story. Drop it in the comments. Let's make the invisible visible. Like this story? Hit that thumbs up. It helps get this message to someone who needs to hear it today. Subscribe to Behind the Story for more true stories of emotional revenge, quiet power, and justice served smart, not loud. And if this one hit home, don't miss the next video. Because revenge isn't always explosive. Sometimes it's strategic. Karen thought she shut the door on me. But what she really did was hand me the key, and I used it to unlock everything I was told I couldn't have.